Welcome to English Story Vault, where you can level up your English. Here we learn through stories that are slow, clear, and enjoyable. Just listen, relax, and appreciate the journey. 1. Introduction. Japan is a nation composed of numerous islands. With a history that is both remarkably long and fascinating, this history begins in ancient times, rooted in islands rich with old stories and myths. And it extends to the present day, where Japan stands as a global leader in technology. The story of Japan is one of resilience, strength, and innovation. For many centuries, Japan was often isolated from other nations. Yet, it underwent significant transformations over time, embracing new ideas while carefully preserving its unique culture and traditions. This book will guide you on this extensive journey. You will travel through thousands of years of Japan's past, witnessing how the nation changed time and again. You will discover how a country can be strong, adapt to new eras, and maintain the importance of its ancient traditions. This is the story of Japan, an epic tale of a nation that repeatedly rebuilt itself. 2. Ancient Japan, a very long time ago. The first people arrived on the islands of Japan and lived there for millennia. This era is known as the Jomon period. These early inhabitants were hunter-gatherers, meaning they sourced their food from the natural world. They hunted animals such as deer and wild pigs. They also gathered edible plants and nuts. They resided in simple homes, often dug into the earth, known as pit dwellings. The Jomon people are famous for creating distinctive pottery. This pottery often featured patterns made with rope. They also held early beliefs about nature and created small clay figurines. Later, new groups of people arrived in Japan, likely from the Korean peninsula. This marked the beginning of the Yahoi period. These newcomers introduced significant changes, the most important being agriculture, particularly the cultivation of rice in wet paddies. Rice farming allowed people to produce a large amount of food in one location, so they no longer needed to move around as much. A greater food supply meant that more people could live together in settlements. The new people also introduced metalworking, learning to use bronze and iron. From these metals, they crafted tools for farming and weapons. For warfare, life began to change. Some individuals became more powerful than others. Small villages evolved into larger groups, forming early states or chiefdoms. Following the Yojei period was the Kofun period. During this time, powerful families or clans grew very strong. Among them, the Yamato clan was particularly dominant. They began to rule over a large portion of Japan, which marked the beginning of the Yamato state. When these powerful leaders died, they constructed enormous tombs for themselves and their families. These tombs, when viewed from above, were often shaped like a keyhole, are called Kofun, and the period is named after them. The construction of these massive tombs demonstrated the immense power these rulers held. Early concepts that would evolve into the Shinto religion also began to form during this time. Ideas from mainland Asia, especially from countries like Korea, also reached Japan during these early periods. Particularly in the Kofun era, an important new concept was a writing system. The people in Japan had no method of writing things down before this. Another profound change was the arrival of a new religion called Buddhism. This was introduced from Korea. These new ideas from other parts of Asia helped the Yamato state become stronger and transformed the way people in Japan lived and thought. 3. The samurai arrive. As time passed, life in Japan continued to change. After the Kofun period, the imperial court resided in a splendid new capital city. This era is known as the Heian period. Members of the court immersed themselves in art, literature, poetry, and music. Life there was incredibly elegant and centered on high culture. However, the court in the capital city grew less concerned with governing the distant provinces. Their focus shifted more to affairs within the court itself. As a result, the emperor's authority weakened in the lands far from the capital. In the countryside, influential families began to accumulate power. These families maintained their own private warriors, known as samurai. The samurai were skilled fighters who pledged loyalty to their lords. Two of the most formidable warrior families were the Taira clan and the Minamoto clan. These two families became fierce rivals, competing for control over Japan. This rivalry ignited a major and pivotal war between the Taira and Minamoto clans. The war spanned several years and dramatically altered Japan. Ultimately, the Minamoto clan emerged victorious. The leader of the victorious Minamoto clan was a man named Minamoto no Yoritomo. Yoritomo did not assume the role of the emperor, who remained in the capital city. Instead, Yoritomo established a new form of government, a military government. He located his government in a place called Kamakura, far from the emperor's capital. In the year 1192, the emperor granted Yoritomo the special title of shogun. The shogun acted as a great general or military dictator. The shogun, not the emperor, held the true power in Japan. This marked the beginning of a long era when military leaders governed the country. The samurai who served the shogun and the powerful warrior families became a very important class in Japanese society, following a strict code of conduct for life in combat. For a time of many wars after the first shogun, Japan confronted new threats. The powerful Mongol Empire sought to conquer Japan. The Mongols attempted to invade by sea on 2 occasions. The first was in the year 1274, and the second was in 1281. On both attempts, massive storms destroyed the Mongol fleets. These storms were seen as a divine gift for Japan, and people called them kamikaze, or divine winds. Japan was saved, but defending against the Mongols was extremely costly. The military government, the shogunate, exhausted its finances. Consequently, the shogunate grew weak. Many samurai warriors did not receive payment for their service, which made them resentful of the government. In the year 1333, the emperor attempted to reclaim power. He succeeded for a brief period, but soon a new leader became shogun. Power was no longer centralized. Instead, powerful regional lords wielded the real authority. These lords were called daimyo. Each daimyo controlled his own territory and commanded his own army of samurai. They frequently battled one another. Seeking to expand their land and influence, this led to numerous small-scale wars throughout Japan. In 1467, a major conflict known as the Anin War erupted. It raged for 10 years and left the country even more fractured. After this war, Japan lacked a strong central government for a long time. This era is known as the Sengoku period, or the Warring States period. It lasted for roughly 100 years. During this time, the daimyo fought countless battles. Different types of combatants emerged. There were samurai, of course, but also new kinds of fighters like ninjas. Ninjas performed covert missions, such as espionage and surprise attacks. Buddhist monks trained in combat also participated in the battles. The Sengoku period was an age of constant conflict and transformation. The old order was collapsing, and new elements were emerging. One significant new element came from a great distance. In the year 1543, Europeans arrived in Japan for the first time. They brought something that revolutionized warfare: guns. Guns became crucial weapons in the wars between the Dai Omo 5. Japan becomes one country for many years. Japan remained divided. The powerful lords called daimyo fighting one another for land and power. The country was plagued by constant warfare. Then, a new development occurred. Ships from Europe reached Japan for the first time. These ships hailed from a country called Portugal. Arriving in the year 1543, they brought new technologies that the Japanese people had never seen. One of the most significant introductions was firearms. Guns were loud and powerful weapons that changed the nature of warfare. Lords who effectively utilized guns could win battles more decisively. Consequently, many daimyos sought these new weapons to gain an advantage over their rivals. The Portuguese traders also introduced a new religion, Christianity. Some Japanese converted, which at times facilitated trade with the Europeans. One powerful, Lord Oda Nobunaga, recognized the strategic value of guns. He was a brilliant and ruthless military commander who used firearms to win numerous battles against other daimyo. Nobunaga had a grand ambition: to end the wars and unify Japan under his rule. successfully conquered a large portion of Japan, and was close to achieving his goal. However, in the year 1582, Oda Nobunaga died after being betrayed by one of his own generals. After Nobunaga's death, one of his most capable generals, Toyotomi Hideyoshi, rose to take his place. Unlike the daimyo, Hideyoshi was not from a noble family. He had risen from a humble background, but he was a masterful leader and strategist, much like Nobunaga. Hideyoshi continued Nobunaga's mission to unify the country. He defeated the remaining rival lords and successfully completed the task. By the year 1590, Japan was united under Toyotomi Hideyoshi's authority. Finally ending the long period of civil war, Hideyoshi ruled Japan for several years. He hoped his young son would succeed him and asked his most trusted lords to protect the boy and guide his future rule. But Hideyoshi died in the year 1598. After his death, the peace proved fragile. The powerful lords began maneuvering for power, deciding who would become the next ruler of Japan. The main conflict was between the lords loyal to Hideyoshi's son and those who supported another influential man. This man was Tokugawa Ieyasu, one of the lords Hideyoshi had trusted. The two factions met for a decisive battle in the year 1600. At a place called Sekigahara, Tokugawa Ieyasu won the Battle of Sekigahara. His victory was pivotal, as it meant his enemies were crushed, and he was now the most powerful person in Japan. Having won this great battle, Tokugawa Ieyasu became the new ruler of the country. His family would go on to rule Japan for a very long time. 6. An age of peace and isolation. After his victory, Tokugawa Ieyasu became the undisputed ruler of Japan. His family initiated a long era of peace, known as the Edo period. It lasted for over 250 years. The government was moved to a city called Edo, which today is the sprawling metropolis of Tokyo. During this long period of peace, Japan was remarkably stable, with no major internal wars. This stability allowed Japan to flourish. Arts and culture became extremely popular. Cities grew larger, and the economy was robust. It was a prosperous time for many people. However, the government also implemented significant changes. They aimed to prevent foreign influences from entering Japan, fearing new ideas and the spread of Christianity. Consequently, the government enacted a policy of isolation. This policy was called Sakoku, meaning closed country. Nearly all foreigners were barred from entering Japan, and Japanese citizens were forbidden from leaving. If they left, they could not return. Japanese people were also prohibited from building large ocean-faring ships. Limited trade was permitted only with a few countries, such as China and Korea. The only Europeans allowed to trade were the Dutch, and they were confined to a small artificial island called Dejima, or the city of Nagasaki. This closed country policy helped the government maintain control. For over 2 centuries, Japan existed in relative isolation from the rest of the world. The population grew significantly, reaching about 30 million people. The government developed roads and schools, which boosted the economy and improved society. However, after many years, problems began to arise. Agricultural growth stagnated, and there were severe famines in the 1830s. The government's response to these crises was ineffective. Despite these later challenges, the Edo period was predominantly a long era of peace and internal growth for Japan. Some ideas from the outside world, like science from Dutch books, managed to slowly filter into Japan. Even with the closed borders 7, modernization, and the end of the samurai for over 200 years, Japan remained closed to most of the world. This period was peaceful, but the shogun-led government had grown weaker than before. By the mid-1800s, Western nations were becoming incredibly powerful, possessing modern ships and weaponry. In 1853, a fleet of ships from the United States, commanded by Commodore Matthew Perry, arrived in Japan. These vessels were large, black, and armed with powerful cannons. The American government demanded that Japan open its borders for trade. They wanted to establish commercial relations with Japan. The shogun's government recognized that they lacked the military power to resist the American fleet. Therefore, The shogun was forced to agree. Japan consented to open some of its ports for trade with the United States. Subsequently, Japan opened its doors to other Western powers, including Britain and Russia. Many people in Japan were angered by this. They viewed the shogun's decision as a sign of weakness, believing he had capitulated to foreign demands. Powerful lords in the south of Japan were particularly outraged. They believed the emperor, not the shogun, should hold the real power. In 1868, these dissatisfied lords initiated a rebellion. They fought against the shogun's forces in support of the young Emperor Meiji. The shogun's government was overthrown, and power was restored to the emperor. This event is known as the Meiji Restoration and was a pivotal moment for Japan. Nation decided it must modernize rapidly to become as strong as the Western powers. The emperor's government relocated the capital from Kyoto to Edo, which was renamed Tokyo. Japan began to modernize at an astonishing pace. They constructed railways to transport people and goods quickly and erected telegraph lines for rapid communication. They established a new education system, making schooling available to all. Christianity was also permitted again after centuries of being banned. Japan invited numerous experts from Western countries to teach them. These advisors helped Japan learn about modern science, engineering, banking, and law. The government also created a modern army and navy, adopting new military strategies. This period of rapid change signaled the end of the old ways. The samurai, the traditional warrior class, lost their special status. Final rebellion by samurai who resisted these changes was defeated by the new modern army. Japan quickly transformed from a closed nation into one that was actively learning from the world, determined to become as strong as the nations that had forced it to open. 8. War and a new Japan after opening up to the world. Japan rapidly modernized, building a formidable army and navy. Japan began to exert this new strength, seeking to establish an empire similar to those of Western countries. Japan fought and won a war against China in the 1890s. It also fought and won a war against Russia in the early 1900s. These victories established Japan as a major power in Asia. The military leaders in Japan gained increasing power and exerted significant influence over the government. Japan continued to expand its control in Asia. Next, in Korea in 1910, Japan sided with Britain and its allies during the First World War. After the war, Japan was recognized as a major global power. However, the military desired even more territory and influence. In the 1930s, Japan's military invaded further into China, sparking the Second Sino-Japanese War. The United States and other nations condemned Japan's aggression and responded by halting sales of vital resources like oil and metal to Japan. This created a highly tense situation. Japan's military leaders chose to go to war with the United States and its allies. They orchestrated a surprise attack. On December 7, 1941, Japan attacked the American naval fleet at Pearl Harbor in Hawaii. This act initiated the war between Japan and the United States, which became part of the Second World War. The war in the Pacific was long and brutal. Japan fought against the United States, Britain, and other allied nations. The conflict involved intense fighting across many islands, with the United States slowly advancing toward Japan. The combat was fierce, and many soldiers lost their lives to end the war. The United States deployed a new and devastating weapon. In August 1945, America dropped atomic bombs on 2 Japanese cities, Hiroshima and Nagasaki. The bombs caused immense destruction and killed vast numbers of people. Following the second bombing, Japan's emperor announced the nation's surrender. The war was over. After the war, Japan was occupied by Allied forces led by the United States. This period brought profound changes to Japan. The military was dismantled. Japan adopted a new constitution which declared that the nation would not maintain an army for waging war. The role of the emperor was redefined. He was no longer considered a divine figure. Japan became a democracy, giving people the right to vote for their leaders. The country was severely damaged by the war, but the Japanese people worked diligently to rebuild. Instead of focusing on military power, the government prioritized strengthening the economy. Japan began manufacturing goods, like cars and electronics, for a global market. Japan's economy experienced incredibly rapid growth. By the 1960s, it had become one of the largest economies in the world. Japan emerged as a leader in technology and trade, demonstrating that a country could achieve strength and success without a large military. The post-war era was a time of peace and economic prosperity for Japan, shaping it into the modern nation we know today with a focus on technology, business, and peace.